Do you want to know more about weathering and detailing freight cars? Why don't you stick around and watch the segment, see how we do it on my Untitled Model Railroad, the Sahara Secondary. Hello everyone, Joe from Central Jersey Conrail and Decals. Welcome back to the paint shop. So this time on the paint shop, we're going to be working on a project that's also been sitting on my bench for about a year now, and that is in-scale kits, 48-foot multi-purpose SpineCar kits. I got these last October when it was my birthday. It was a birthday gift from my family. So I just haven't had the chance to sit down and really take a look at them and start putting them together. So those of you who don't know what in-scale kits is, it's a company based out of the UK, and they make really nice white metal kits for mainly focusing on intermodal equipment and flat cars and specialty flat cars. So they have a lot of nice kits, so go over and check them out. I'll put a link to the website up in the comments for this video so you can go over and check out their site. Not too like flashy of a website with pictures and lists and all that stuff. It's kind of just a catalog, and you click on it and then you go into the project and you can see the pictures of the projects. Okay, so now that I told you what we're going to be doing, I'm not going to talk too much about it. Let's just get right over to the bench and get working, and I'll talk to you afterwards. Okay, so when you get your kits from in-scale kits, they come in little packages like this. Inside is this piece of paper, and if you go inside is an instruction sheet. Now the instruction sheet's not all that in-depth. It tells you pretty much the basics of putting the kit together. Not a whole lot of extra wordage or stuff like that. So once you get the first steps, because it is a repetitive process because it's a 5-unit set, so once you get the first car done, you kind of are like, oh, I get the instructions. Then it goes a lot quicker as you go on through the process. So I'm just going to walk you through it. I'm going to learn some of the tips that I learned putting the first kit together to kind of guide you and give you some tips and pointers. So when you open the bag, inside is the 5 basic frames. They're wrapped in this tissue material. And then there's all these little pieces, parts, and they're all jumbled in one bag. They're not really broken up into sprues or kind of assembly areas. So what I do is lay out all the parts on the benchwork like this, and then separate all those little pieces. So it makes it easier to find when you're trying to assemble the kits, because you have the running boards here, the brake rigging, brake valves and air cylinders, the fifth wheels, and the retractable hitches, and all the other associated parts for this. So the other thing to be aware of is on the bottom they have inscribed which letter of the 5-unit set it is. This is letter B, and then it goes E, D, C, and then A. So keep that in mind, because the B and the A's are the 2 endpoints of the 5-unit set. Okay, so what you're going to have to determine before you start assembling is what you're going to be using each frame for. Are you going to be using it for a 48-foot trailer or smaller, or are you going to be using it for a container? The reason is because if you do use it for a container, you then have to put the fifth wheel in the retracted position like so. If you're going to be using it for a trailer, you're going to be using one of these fifth wheels that goes in like this. The other thing you need to be aware of is with the A and B chassis, they have a retractable foot, and that goes here, and that's for a 20-foot chassis, because the 20-foot goes from here to here. Then if you're going to be using it for a 40-foot chassis, you have to also put these post extenders in here so that the container sits level from forward to back. So that I point all that out because it's not really understood by reading the directions that you should really pre-plan out your 5-unit set of what is going on which chassis. The next thing I learned is if you look on the side, they have these little divots that are they call them pre-drilled holes. I don't really call them drilled holes, I call them divots. And that is for where your associated brake rigging goes. The brake rigging goes on the A, B, and D units. Now, what I learned very quickly is if you look at like this brake cylinder, it's got this real tall post. I was having a ton of problems trying to glue it in because it kept rocking and falling over. So what I do is I cut the post almost all the way off and just leave it on the 2 feet, put the chassis on its side, and just let it sit there for a little while. So I'll show you that when we get to gluing. The next thing is this 3-way brake valve. It's a cool little detail, and it kind of rounds out the whole car. However, in this configuration, the way they molded it, it's a pain. I couldn't get it to mold properly, and if you look, like, they end up being crooked and just looking horrible. So what I ended up doing, and I think it looks okay, is with this set here, is I just cut all that associated extra stuff off and just mounted it straight to the side. Because in scale, you're not going to notice it's not sticking the proper width out. You see the three-way brake valve there, and it gives you the idea that the associated equipment's there. So the other thing to be realized is when you're mounting this stuff, on this side is where the reservoir goes, and this side is where the three-way brake valve goes. All right, so with that being said, let's get putting it together. Okay, so as you can see, I've got the brake rigging done on the both sets that I'm working on. Mounted the three-way valve up here on the side by cutting it. I think it looks much cleaner and easier to mount, and the air cylinders are all done too. So now what we need to do is we need to do the decking. So the mistake I made on the first set was that the decking I put too close. There's not much of a gap. Now, reading the instructions, there's supposed to be more of a gap. So the problem is with the trailers. So the problem is when the deck's like that, these trailers here, the Atlas, they fit in there fine. The micro trains fit in there fine, but the Trainworks, these UPS trailers, they don't fit right, and that is because the boards are not sitting properly. So I got to make sure I pay attention to the boards on this set. So if you notice, there's this little dip. This goes to the rear of the car, and it sits on there like this. And there's two different styles. If you look. So this one goes on this side. So I'm going to do a quick test fit with this Trainworks trailer. You can see if I space it out properly, the trailer fits in there. Like that. Okay, so I'm going to get the glue in and get all these decks on. Okay, so now I'm going to affix the pedestals. If you look at this, when you install them, when you look at this little opening points to the front of the car, and this little button on the bottom goes in the hole in the chassis. Okay, so now we're going to glue the platforms on. And these platforms go on the A and B cars. Okay, so these platforms are glued, so now all we got to do is just fold down the edge. Like that. And there you go. So I'll do the rest of them. There you go. Alright, so now we got to glue these brake wheel stands on for the handbrake. Okay, everyone, so the project's moving along nicely. You know, it's taken a while to do all 15 cars with all those decals, but we got them on. They're all sealed up now with Model Flex Clear Flat. I used a brush to seal them up so they don't get ruined. You know, I have to admit, I have been running the cars in between shoots, and they're running really nice. So now we're going to move on to the weathering. What I've decided is over the last couple of days I've been doing a lot of rail fanning, a lot of research online, and you know that TTX yellow, it just gets real grimy after a long period. And I noticed that it seems like the rail brown is going to be the best match to try and emulate that. So what I've done is set up rail brown in my airbrush and thinned it down with 3 drops of isopropyl alcohol just to give it a little translucent effect so we're not doing a total coverage. And so let's get going. I got 15 cars to weather. So sit back, watch, and I'll talk to you after. Okay, everyone, so now that all the cars are weathered up, they look super good. The rail brown was exactly what I was looking for, the effect. I also took the opportunity to go ahead and weather up some of these, all these trailers, because I just didn't want them looking shiny and new out of the box. Because, you know, you look at intermodal trailers, even though they look clean on the surface, but when you get a good close look at them, they got a lot of road grime, especially in the tires and the undercarriage and stuff. So I went ahead and used some sand with 3 drops of isopropyl alcohol and just give a quick dusting on all the trailers. So now what we need to do is we need to mount up all these trailers on these chassis. Now, I want to mount them permanently because I'm not going to be offloading or loading them. I want them to be reliable. I don't want the trailers falling off during running. So I'm just going to go ahead and use some CA glue and glue them in. Now, through my testing, what I've determined is when you use these trailers, this is an Atlas 45-footer. They fit in fine, but the problem that I have is that this pin on the front of the trailer makes it sit up too high, and it's kind of unprototypical. So what I've determined is I'm going to cut those pins off because I don't need them. I'm never going to use them for hooking up to tractors on the layout because they're permanently mounted. So I'm just going to take a pair of screw nippers, cut this little nub flush, and then when you put the trailer in there, it'll sit down in the boards and it'll sit nice and flat on the hitch assembly like it should. It won't be popped up in the air. So I'll just go ahead and glue that in. All right, everyone, so there you go. There's the InScale Kits 48-foot spine cars. Yeah, awesome. Love the way they came out. Perfect, just what I was looking for. So a lot of you are probably watching the videos, and probably a lot of you out there are like, oh, that was a lot of work. Could have just bought something. Yes, you know, BLMA does offer the 53-foot spine cars, and also I know that Walthers did do a production run of the fuel foilers. However, you know, I think the 53-footers really were for the modern era, where, you know, the 48-foot was kind of that era before, I'd say, the mid-90s, that before the 53-foots really came into their being. So I was looking for something that fit in that era, and I think the 48-foot spine cars were perfect. However, you know, production-wise, it's kind of hard to find anybody out there doing them. So InScale Kits was the only other option. So some variations that you could have done while you're building. You know, I went all plastic trailers. I'm just that kind of modeler where I know Digicom makes all kinds of paper models for the trailers, but you know, it just doesn't sit well with me. That's just my personal preference. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with anybody who does. Heck, it's a lot cheaper, but you know, I like the plastic models, so that's why I went ahead and bought all those. I used a mix of trailers. I went with Atlas. I did a couple 48-footers and the 45-footers mostly, and then I had a couple micro trains in there, 45 and 48, and then the Train Works for the UPS trailers, which are superb looking trailers. I'm very happy I got those. The biggest stumbling block in this whole project was the decals. I did not expect the sheer amount of decals that Microscale gave us. They gave you such small detailed little inscriptions that go on the side of the cars about, you know, lowering the pedestal before raising trailers, and all these kinds of warnings and cautions that are all over these cars. The only problem is, number one, their drawing just doesn't really give you all that much description, so you got to rely on prototype photos, and you know, the finding the decals on that sheet because there's no legend or anything like that. That became a real issue too. You know, when you're doing your historical research and your prototypical research for these cars, the problem is when you get out there is they get just super dirty and a lot of stuff gets obscured. So it's very hard to find which stencils go where. So, you know, you may look at some of my cars up close and they may not be prototypically accurate, but you know what? I get the point across. And then after they were all assembled and I put the trailers on and they were weathered, there's a lot of detail you don't notice. All the warnings and cautions that I put on the hitch assembly, you can't even see it because it's underneath the trailer, but it's there. But yeah, so that was kind of a learning curve as we went along. Towards the end of the process, I was getting very quick at the decaling. So the other thing I'm going to caution you about when you do the in-scale kits is make sure you go over those chassis with a fine-tooth comb, because I missed some flashing, especially on the A units, and no fault to in-scale kits. You know what, they did a really good job and they produced a really good product, but it just seems like there was a little too much flashing on the A kit, and I missed it when I was assembling it, and shame on me for not paying attention, because the flashing was rubbing on the wheel sets and it was actually causing derailment. So after my first initial tests, I kind of was like, oh, what is that noise? And then I picked up on it, so I was able to just snip it off. So as you're building these, just be aware of that. So now we have a really good trail van train here. I think we're going to call this either Male 3 or Male 7. I haven't done my research yet to know, but it's either going to be Male 3 or Male 7. And what's a great part about it is I can mix and match now with the Walthers 4-unit sets and these 5-unit sets. I can kind of mix and match, put a couple stacks in there and then do the rest trailers or vice versa. So yeah, offers a lot of versatility to my intermodal operations here. And one last note about in-scale kits, I'm not getting any kind of endorsement. I paid for all this stuff myself. I will tell you that I'm going to throw up the link in the comment section so that you can click over there and go check out their stuff. They have a wealth of good kits. And you know what, to be honest with you, seeing as how well these went together and how good they look, I will be buying some more in the future. So yeah, go over there and check it out in the comment section. And so with that, that's going to put a wrap on this paint shop. So if you're seeing this video for the first time, you like what you're seeing, please subscribe to the channel, because we'd love to have you following along, and I'm always posting a lot of free content like this. And if you haven't done so already, please check out our Facebook page and Instagram account, because I'm always posting daily updates and status of all the projects that I'm doing, like this one. And that's all I have for you this time. Thanks for watching. See you later. Bye.